So are we. So I'll be honest, this was not on my yearly bingo card. We had an opportunity to talk, a few months ago, and came to my office and then left, and I was freaking out for a little bit. And then he worked up the nerve to tell me kind of what he's been thinking through. But I wanted you guys to hear from him, and I want you also to hear that as a pastor and as a minister and as someone who gets to vocationally serve, it's not always an easy decision to retire or to kind of step away from ministry. And so I wanted you to hear the heart behind it, because I believe it's the heart that has driven your ministry for so many years. And so I kind of wanted to let you guys get to experience and hear that as well as I want us to, as a church, be a church where we honor pastors, where we honor people who are serving faithfully for years in ministry. And so we're going to do that today. And so how many years have you been in ministry full time?
28, I think it is. 28 or 29.
28 years. And at this Bay Area for how long?
18 years.
18 years.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. Let's yeah. And I guess I should probably preface this a little bit. If you're new here, this is not a normal Sunday. If you're new, you're kind of visiting, or haven't been here in a while. We have an opportunity just to hear a little bit about just kind of what's the next step for one of our former pastors. It's my dad as well, which makes it even more awesome and sad, but either way, I've had the opportunity to work next to my dad for the past almost 11 years now, and so it's gonna be fun. So, favorite memories. What are some of your favorite memories from your time here at BACC?
He gave me a list of questions, and so I thought I'm going to still try to wing it up here of things I'm thinking about. But one thing that came to mind was, first of all, it's weird having Kyle call me Steve. I think that's really weird. So it's been Dad all these years, and now it's Steve. But I remember when Mike called me, I was working in a church in Harlingen, and he asked me if I wanted to come to Bay Area because Carl Bookout is moving on to his sporting missions, and we knew each other from camp. And so I remember the first thought in my mind was, why would anybody move to Houston? And all I could think of is, I've driven through Houston, it's just cars and people. I don't want to live there. But it turned out that I had told the minister in Harlingen that I would be there for 2 years, but no promises after that. And Mike called me on that Sunday, or the Monday morning after that 2-year anniversary. And that's the only thing that caught my attention. And so I came and checked out. I told him, let me come check out the church first. I've never been here. And then we'll start talking. And we did start talking. So I came and then interviewed, and then I came back to, I think when we decided, I think it was that we'd already decided to come, but to be introduced to everybody. Well, it turned out it was Go Texan Sunday. And so I went around telling everybody that I was just really impressed that they would throw a party like this for me, even though I wasn't here yet. And they didn't catch my humor that I was making jokes that I really realized what was going on or whatever. But that was when I found out, though, everybody I got introduced to seemed to be like, hi, my name is so-and-so. I'm a former elder. I'm a former elder. We had so many former elders. I just thought that was really funny here with that. And I don't know if you remember Mandy, I forgot her last name now, but I knew her from camp. And that Go Texan Sunday, it turned out they got rid of all the chairs and they had line dancing. And I had some video of Mike. He had a little bit of hair back then, but I had video of him line dancing. I thought that was really funny, and I put it on YouTube, and it's gotten 50,000 likes. And I thought that was funny. But Mandy walks through, and she goes, and I knew her from camp, like I said, right? What are you doing here? And I said, well, the church might hire me. And she goes, cool, and just kept on walking, right? I don't know if that was a good thing or a bad thing from that, whatever. But once I got here, I left youth ministry. Got into adult ministry. One of the first things the 50-plus gathering had was a luau at the Brunson's house. And I remember Cecil Abbott and Bill Brunson putting on a grass skirt and dancing the luau. And I turned to Deb and I said, there's no difference between youth ministry and adult ministry. It's all the same. So anyway, so there's lots of memories. We had a good group back then when I first got here that had motorcycles, and we would go on motorcycle rides on Sunday afternoons after church. That was really cool. And I don't know, memories, they're going to keep coming to me as we go along, so keep talking.
So you, my grandpa, your dad, was a minister, kind of shifted the family entirely. His dad wasn't necessarily following Jesus like he should, I guess. And so you didn't want to go into ministry to start with. So tell us a little bit about your path and kind of even some of the early years of ministry, what they were like for you. And I've got a couple pictures. So.
Oh, no. Okay, so like you said, my dad was a minister, and really he was a minister until I was 12. And then we moved to Nebraska, and he worked for Nebraska Christian College. And he was gone all the time through my junior high and high school years working for the college. But I knew enough about it, and I was around other ministers, and I didn't want that. First of all, ministers don't make any money. I felt like we were poor growing up. I didn't want to be poor my whole life. And so I was, surprised, loving basketball, so I was going to be a teacher and coach basketball. I ended up in the meantime marrying to Deb. And Deb's father owned a Pepsi business, so I worked for them for a couple years. I went to Nebraska Christian College for 2 years after I graduated from high school, by the way, just to play basketball. While I was there, though, I did get an associate arts degree in Christian education, which means I'm qualified to teach Sunday school. Yeah, right? But it's amazing how that stuff comes back a little bit. But anyway, so I worked for Deb's dad for a couple years, and then we went off to Kearney, Nebraska for Kearney State College, and that's where I was going to get my coaching or whatever, get into coaching, finish school there and coach. And Deb's dad wanted us to move to Texas to start a fast food restaurant, and he had the franchise rights for the whole state, so all I could see was money, money, money. And so I thought that was the answer to my financial problems. And then a year after we opened the restaurant, he died of a brain aneurysm, and Deb's mom really didn't want the business, and so we're stuck. So saying all that, say this, I've never, ever, except for one time, and I'll talk about this, looked for a job. The jobs have always come to me. And so I ended up taking Deb to try to find her a job. I was going to go back to school, and they asked me about being a meat wrapper in a grocery store, which I had no clue what that was. And I said, but it's part-time. I can do that when I'm in the college. Well, I immediately got into the grocery business. After 5 years, I worked my way up to a store director. And then for 5 years, I was a store director and created a ton of bad habits. And so as a store director, you have lots of people who want to buy you things and take you places because they want displays, they want you to sell their products. And so I was never home, and I didn't realize how miserable I had made my family life. It sneaks up on you. Anyway, I didn't realize it till I did realize it. And so then this was the first time in all my life, I'm 33, 32 years old, I don't know, something like that, that I actually said, okay, I realize I'm not living my life the way I was raised to live in the church in Sunday school, and my parents the way it raised me, and why is that? And look what a mess I've made of my life. And so I've always told people that I don't think any other woman would have put up with me. So God definitely had Deb for a reason in my life. She did, not that she put up with me, but at one point she says, like, she just threw it up, said, okay, God, you take over. And God really did start working on me. During about a 1.5 year time period, I started reading my Bible and praying to God for the first time in my life to build a relationship with God. Before that, I would read when I went to church, and I would pray when they asked me to pray. And every year for the last 5 years leading up to that, they would ask me to be an elder, and I just laughed at them because they didn't know what my life was like away from church. So anyway, all that saying is that God started working on me, and then because I had built all these bad relationships at this grocery store I was at, I applied at HEB for a store directorship and went through the whole process, and they turned me down because they said they were doing a reduction in sales force. And after the end of that is when the church in McAllen, where we were living, Central, asked me to be their youth minister, and I just laughed at them. And so I didn't say yes or no, and gave it a while, and I remember they took me to lunch and said that, asked me about it. We were planning on leaving the church at the end of that year and then going out to other churches. But I finally I had learned to, this is kind of going to be my theme today, I think, surrender and obey as much as I could. And I said, okay, God, well, let's see how this plays out. And so in the back of my mind, I think I've told you all, most of you will, that in the back of my mind, I thought too many in the church knew me, and I would never get the votes to accept it. So I was going to humiliate myself by not getting the votes, and then I would fail that way. And I said, see, God. Well, anyway, it turned out I got enough votes, so I had to take the job. But that was like a blessing from then on. I wasn't dumb enough to realize that this is more than a job, right? And so I had to start developing. Okay, so that's a long way to get around to saying that got me into the ministry. And from there, it just kind of kept growing and growing. And McAllen Church was a very dysfunctional church. I didn't realize how bad it was because we had been there for 15 years or maybe even more up to that point. But it was a good training ground to start out. And going to Harlingen was a great church. The minister was a good friend of mine. We golfed every Friday together. He was my mentor. And when I told him I was leaving McAllen, he asked me to come to Harlingen. We were actually going to go to a children's home and be house parents is our thought at that point. And so anyway, we went to Harlingen for a couple of years. And that was really a time where we kind of were able to grieve and to refocus on what God wants us to do. And then Mike calls and I end up here in where are we at? Houston.
Houston. Okay. Webster, yeah. Actually, we do have a picture from back then, I think, of your ordination. Is that
Not that one?
Yeah, that one?
Okay, yeah. And that's my dad to the far left there. He did the sermon that day.
And then we also have another picture from you at camp, I think.
Uh-oh.
Look how skinny you were.
I know.
Just kidding.
Oh, my goodness.
That was back when they didn't have a covering over the basketball hoop, and it was hot. So years of camp. So
I don't remember that.
You don't remember that?
Okay.
That's you, right? That'd be random if it wasn't.
Yeah, it is.
So how I mean, you kind of mentioned like you didn't set out to be a pastor.
No.
It kind of just came to you. But how did it change you over the years? How did you being in vocational ministry change you?
I guess maybe you need to ask Deb this question. I think I've learned that we as humanity, myself and almost everybody, we're very selfish individual people. And I think being in the ministry gave me the time to study God's word a lot more. But the work that God did in me humbled me to some degree. I mean, I hate it because it's not very humble to say God humbled me, right? But part of checking your selfishness with doing God's will comes to this point where I think you just got to surrender to what God wants you to do. And there's a lot of things that God asked me to do through my years of ministry that I never would have done if I wasn't in the ministry. And so when I surrendered and then obeyed, it just seemed like God continued to bless me. So I don't ever mean to preach prosperity religion, but there is something true to being more satisfied in life when you're in God's will than when you're outside of God's will. I really felt like during that time period where I said I had a couple years where I was really building my relationship with God, there was a couple of things that happened and even before that, there should have been some dire consequences to my life that there weren't. And so part of that, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking like, well, why did God save me from those things? And at this time, I kind of started thinking through that stuff. And so that kind of kept me humble too. And then, for instance, kind of a funny thing, kind of not. When I got to Houston, I ended up meeting people that were hoarders. And I had at one time, I think it was 7 different people that 3 of them I worked really, really closely with. 4 of them did some help with. But I'm not the neatest person in the world, but hoarding's nasty. And yet you've got to love those people and try to help them. And I really think God taught me a lot from things like that, is I've got to get outside of my comfort zone and to be used however he wants me to be used. So I've just tried to do that. I think that's what ministry has helped change me. I wish that I didn't. I guess I'm glad that it happened, but it shouldn't have to be that way, right? We should all realize that we need to surrender to whatever God has in store for us and just be obedient and do it.
Yeah. I hope you hear the kind of the tension as being a minister and a pastor is some of it is done because the church needs things to happen, right? So you're a pastor because the church has needs and you can meet those needs. But we also feel as pastors sometimes that we get to be pastors because God needs to do something in us. And so that's where a church that's gracious and will allow us to grow in our faith. I mean, I've seen you grow tremendously even over the past 10 years since I've been here. And some of that is just getting to work alongside you. But I mean,
One thing too, at this church, I knew that every class I taught, I was never the smartest guy in the room. Never. I mean, there's a lot of intellectual people. I mean, a lot of smart people. I didn't, really know an engineer until I moved to Houston, and it took a little while trying to figure out how to deal with that. So anyway, I think it's kind of funny.
I feel like I told you pretty often early on that you weren't the smartest guy in the room. So
you did, but I didn't believe you.
You didn't believe me? Okay.
Yeah. So no, I always knew that, but also then at the same time too, then that means you better come prepared, right? Well, and when you don't know the answer, you just don't know the answer. And so right now we have a Sunday morning group, and where's Andrew at? I pointed Andrew, I call him Mr. Wikipedia, because he can keep all that stuff in his head. I'm not able to do that, but still, it's. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. All right, so speaking of teaching and stuff like that, what are some memorable sermons that you had, both that was awesome and then also that was terrible, and then also maybe a sermon illustration that you can think of that was really good and one that was also terrible?
Couple things that were good, and I guess they're illustrations. I don't know if I could just say sermons, but I did a sermon one time, and I steal a lot of ideas from other people, and I don't remember where I got it, but we put a rope across the stage, and it was, the rope was to represent eternity past and eternity, of course, I think I did it wrong anyway, eternity past and eternity future, and then had a little black mark on that rope, and that's the present. And to me, that illustration made a big deal because there's so much time on either end of that little black dot, and yet our life, to me, goes back to our selfishness, is so wrapped up in that little black dot. But a lot of people had talked about that, years after that illustration, that was really good. Probably my favorite, though, was we went to a conference, I think it was the one in Atlanta, and there was a guy that got up and spoke, and he said he was guest speaking at another church, and he had gone to some mission or something the day before, and it hit him that he's going to ask everybody at that conference to donate their shoes, and he was going to take it to that mission that he had visited the week before. And so I remember sitting there thinking, I wonder how that would go over here at Bay Area. And so my next opportunity I got to preach, I did that. And we had about, I don't remember now, but 75 pairs of shoes that people donated that day. And we didn't even know where to go. A lady told me about Star of Hope, and we ended up putting them in garbage bags, and we drove down to Star of Hope and gave them away. But there afterwards, for a lot of weeks, Ray Burgess would call me and ask to know. On Saturday night, he'd call me and say, "Are you preaching tomorrow?" And I go, "Nope." He goes, "Good. I can wear my alligator boots," or "Good. I can wear whatever." So he was kind of leery that I would do that again. So he was kind of worried about it. That was a good one. A bad one was I did a funeral for people I didn't know. I met the wife, and she told me that she wanted it to be a celebration of life and to keep it real good, lighthearted, and nobody's. I mean, obviously you're sad when somebody dies, but it was all a good thing. So they didn't want anything very heavy or whatever. And it turns out that the guy did a lot of woodworking. I went in the house and saw a lot of woodworking, and that's what his love was. And so while I'm doing the funeral, I said something like, can you imagine? When he gets to heaven and Jesus, he meets Jesus. And of course, Jesus was a carpenter's son. So, he would have done a lot of woodworking too. And so you just kind of imagine Jesus would ask this guy, well, what's it like to use power tools? I thought that was really funny, but obviously not, because nobody laughed. And nobody laughed in the funeral. And then I had another kind of lighthearted joke. And after that, I said, okay, let's just get through this. Let's not do that. So I learned not to joke around at funerals during that time. Unless I know the people really, really well, but I thought that would be a good one. Yeah. That's all I got on that.
Well, I mean, I was thinking about too, things that you do in ministry. I remember one year we were doing a VBS where we were raising a bunch of money, and there was these certain things that triggered events that happened, and I think we have a picture of that.
Oh no.
So we raised a certain amount of money, and I think you shaved your legs and spray painted your hair.
If I remember right, there was. Every $100 that we raised, they would do something to me. So, and we ended up raising like $1,000. So I had 10 different things. The worst thing was they put some kind of syrup on me, and then flour, and that grossed me out. I barely made it through that at that time. Good thing was from there I went straight home and showered, and I never went back to the church. So I didn't clean up after VBS that year.
It's true.
But yeah, youth ministry makes you do a lot of things that you wouldn't do otherwise. But I also got the chance, so at camp, I would kept trying to get Kyle set up with some girls. And it was always his birthday during camp. And so I would, use that as like, he's lonely, it's his birthday, go sit by him at chapel tonight or whatever. But he never married him. He did okay though. He married a really good wife. Anyway, he got lucky with Amy.
Moving on. So what are some things about ministry that has surprised you, and then what are some things that have sustained you? Not a lot of ministers make it through their time without getting frustrated, step away early, some sort of failures. To be able to make it through this many years of ministry and be faithful through all of it, what sustained you? What surprised you?
I think what sustained me more or less was, again, I'd lived a certain amount of life before I became a minister. And I think, a lot of times I think youth ministers come out of Bible college or whatever and go directly into ministry. And even when I got there, I was shocked at how maybe people are tied into their own personal preferences and they demand that at the church or whatever, and then fights start over that. So that was our life in McAllen. Is that church was like that a lot, and it just again was so selfish and childish so Bay Area's been a blessing. I know that before I got here, Bay Area had its problems. Every church has their problems. It kills me that people stay away from church because there's imperfect people in church and they don't want to deal with them, which that's everywhere. I don't know. I think that part is what sustained me was that I was understanding what my purpose was as a minister, and to be able to just to deal with it. What was the second part of that?
What sustained you or surprised you?
Oh, it surprised me. No, I thought I had something else.
Well, you had mentioned too, like one of the things, especially even in the past 10 years or so, is you were challenged to read the Bible through in a year.
Oh,
that's kind of shifted your.
That helps me a lot. Yeah. So early on, Jeremy Napier, was Jeremy in here?
I think they're out of
They're
town.
gone, huh? He said, let's do a Bible in the Year class, and we'll lead it together. And honestly, that's the first time I've read the Bible through cover to cover in a year. And that was probably, I said I've been here 18 years, probably 16 years ago. And so we've done it every year. There's been a group of us that have done it almost every year since then. And so I think that is a big benefit. One thing is just reading the Bible cover to cover. A lot of people get hung up on a lot of things that Paul says. When you read through the Pauline epistles real quickly, you realize there's a lot more things important in life than individual things. So let's just try to maintain unity. I don't think you get that unless you read it really, really fast. And he wanted the church waiting on Jesus and not getting tied into little things. But that, even when COVID happened, we started Zoom Bible studies. At first we had them in the morning and the evening. I continued after things we started getting back together. We continued a morning Zoom. I think we did it like 5 days a week for a while, and we got it down to 3, I think. And then probably for the last 3 years, we've done Tuesday, Thursday. And that's forced me, and we just do verse by verse. Get a book out, choose a book, and read verse by verse. And that helped me to stay studying into God's Word a lot. And of course, we have small groups and things like that. So being in the ministry, you're able to do that. Part of why I want to leave ministry instead of, I don't know how to say this right. I don't want to say the 10 years because everybody took that wrong when I said it before. I'm not going to die in 10 years, but there's other things I want to do in life, but I also want to make sure that what I'm doing for God is not because I'm in ministry, it's because of my relationship with God. And I won't know that until I get out of here. Now, I'm not leaving here, don't get me wrong. I still plan on serving at the church, but it's things like reading through the Bible in a year. Would I continue doing that once I know I don't have other people checking to see if I'm doing it, if that makes sense?
And that's really one of the hearts of our church, is that not your spiritual walk is not something you do alone. Right, that there are people that want to read with you and they want to hold you accountable in your reading. There are people that want to study and learn and be part of that. And we believe doing that in a community is the best way to grow and continue to live that way. So maybe a little bit more personal, but how has being in ministry shaped our family? And then, this is kind of a hard one, but would you have done anything different?
Well, if I could go do life all over again, I don't know. We were just talking about this. Is Herman in here? Yeah, we were talking about this a couple weeks ago, and I said, like, God should always give us a mulligan and do it over again. And so we were talking. I can't remember who. Oh, it was Richard Cochter, right? So I'm putting names out. I owe you guys $5 at the end of this. But anyway, we were talking about this. Like I would like to, do life all over again. Which obviously I would be a coach. I would continue doing that. But at the same time too, as I was trying to be a coach, my character came through when I was in the grocery store. I feel like, because my raw character is that I think I would have messed life up really bad had I not developed a relationship with God. That sounds bad. So in that regards, no, I wouldn't do anything over again. God, you go through experiences in life, I think, for God to get you where he wants you. And then, like you said, there comes to a point where you surrender and you just try to be as obedient as you can. But I think as far as our family goes, it was like I didn't spend much time with the family before I got into the ministry. I was always working. I was always playing, out golfing, doing other things. And so it got us, like you were in junior high, I think, when I got into the ministry. And Jessica, I think, was in 9th grade or maybe 8th grade. I don't remember. But anyway, it gave me an opportunity. It's like God gave me a mulligan then to get reestablished with our family. And we did everything together. We went to camp together, went to CIY together. We'd go on vacation, and they wanted to bring other church kids on our vacation. And I said, no, I'm tired of taking kids all over. It's amazing how parents would trust me. Like in our case, we were going from McAllen to either Tennessee or Colorado. And I wouldn't even meet the parents. They dropped the kids off and trusted me to take them across the nation. But I'm glad that they did, I guess, that way. But we as a family then, from that point on, were able to serve together. And that has been very, very redeeming, I guess, through all of this, right?
Yeah. So what's one thing that you can say out loud, right? As a pastor, that you wish kind of the average churchgoer would know about the church, about pastoring?
Yeah. One, I guess what's on my mind is thinking about that is that I don't think we really appreciate that the church is the bride of Christ. People don't want to go, like I said before, go to church because they have a conflict with somebody in the church, or people don't get along, or the communion table's not up front, the focal point, or just different things. They don't sing the music that I want to sing, whatever preference they might have, or whatever excuse they want to give so they don't come to church. And when I say church, I'm not talking about this building, although this building is what houses all of us, but it's the people in this building is the church. And so again, part of what I think is that we need to be here for one another. Our Sunday school this morning talking about the story of Joseph, and it's what God's doing with the brothers, that the brothers are what helps people see the face of God. And kind of, as thinking about that, that's what we're doing too, that as we help one another, we help each other to see God, who God truly is. When we see who God truly is, we help to see ourselves as we truly are. And to me, that's what changes all of us. And we would be a much brighter light in our community if we began to learn to trust one another and love on one another and be there for one another. And I feel like church has become, to too many people, a place where you come and sit down and then you check it off the list that I've been obedient this week, I went to church, and you go home and nothing's changed in your life. I hope that you can learn that it's way more than that surrendering and being obedient to God is helped tremendously by being in church. And I don't think you can fully, again, get the blessing of who God is and who the church is without being a part of church. Yeah. What else was there on that? That was one thing.
Yeah. What else do you wish people knew?
I guess the other thing would be that people would realize, I hesitate because I'm going to get blasted for saying this, tithing will change your life. Let's put it that way. I feel like the reason why I can retire now, I've got friends who, when I've told them that I'm retiring, they're like shocked. First of all, they were also shocked that I ever got in the ministry, but shocked that we're able to retire. But they aren't able to retire, and so they're a little bit of, I guess, jealousy in that regards. I still go back to my parents taught me the tithe, whether I like it or not. As I got develop my relationship with God, there's a verse in Malachi. It's the only place I think in the Bible that says it, where God says, test me in this. Test me in your first fruits. And so whatever we do, we have tried to tithe. We had litters of puppies that some of you guys know about. We would always give away a puppy as our tithe from the puppies. Plus we would tithe, for the money that we make on them to the church. And then the rest of the money we would buy Rockets tickets. But that became, I learned to appreciate that. It's not out of duty so much. At first it was. And again, this sounds like prosperity religion, but in my history of dealing with people in the church, there's only been a handful of people who didn't tithe that said, you know what, I'm going to do it, and we'll see what happens. And they never come back and said it didn't work. In fact, all of them, you look at their life, and God has just blessed them, and they have prospered. And so, to me, it's a fine line between your heart being right with God and your duty, but there's something about, if you can't trust God with your finances, do you really trust God with anything? And I think that's what tithing really does. Yeah. That's all. Yeah. Well, there's a bunch more, but I don't want to get negative.
Oh, I think the theme that I hear is when you say yes to God, no matter what it is, not only will God kind of put the things in place that you need to do that, but he'll also begin changing you to be who God needs you to be.
Yeah.
But at the end of that, you've realized that that's actually who you wanted to be in the first place. Yeah. That's the joy that comes from following Jesus, is that it's not prosperity, right? It's not prosperity, it's flourishing. It's you get to be the person God intended you to be. Mm-hmm. And for some of us, God says, I need you to be in ministry full time because you wouldn't do it without it, maybe. Or for other people, it's, hey, I just need you to say yes to the next thing. And if you say yes to the next thing, I'm not only going to give you what you need to do the next thing, but I'm also going to give you the joy of what it is to be in the mission of God and to serve him. And so in this next season for you, I'm excited for what God's going to do. There's a couple verses I wanted to read. One's from Psalm 92, and I think it has the word old in there, so that's why I wanted to use that one. Psalm 92, 12 through 15 says this. Is that right? The righteous flourish like a palm tree, and they grow like a cedar in Lebanon. They are planted in the house of the Lord. They flourish in the courts of our God. They still bear fruit in old age. There you go. And they are ever full of sap and green, to declare that the Lord is upright. He is my rock, and there is no unrighteousness in him. I just think about, God's not done with you, and I think that's an important thing that we have to remember, is that even in your retirement, God's going to do some amazing things, and we're excited to see that as well. The other one is Hebrews.
And I'm hoping the fact that I'm full of sap, that God can use that sap for good too.
And the other one is Hebrews 6. Hebrews 6, 9 through 12 says this. It says, though we speak in this way, yet in your case, behold, we feel sure of better things that belong to salvation. For God is not unjust as to overlook your work and the love that you have shown for his name in serving the saints, as you still do. And we desire each of you to show the same earnestness, to have the full assurance of hope until the end, that you may not be sluggish, but imitators of those who through faith and patience inherit the promises. And so we believe, we're excited for what God has done in you, and we're excited what God's going to continue to do. I feel like, Mom not having a chance to say things probably is not necessarily the best thing either, but I don't know if she would come up here and do it anyway. So, but a lifelong of ministry is something that we should celebrate. And so a couple of things that I just wanted to mention before we kind of close this out is, what does this mean for us as a church? We are believing that God has a plan for us in the future, and that plan is to continue to grow, not only in our ministries, but in faith and spiritual formation. But we believe planting churches in our community in the future is something we want to do. And so when we think about our next hire, we're thinking about that next hire being someone that we're training to be sent out from our church. We're thinking about someone that can either fill a position where we can send someone else out, or someone who can go out and do that. But that also means that in the meantime, we're going to need people in our church to step up and do some of the things that you currently do. And so, we'll probably send out some stuff and ask people specifically, hey, here's some areas we'd love for you to step up and step into. And like we said, your answer is simply yes, and God will provide everything you need to do that. But one of the the things also is in your retirement, or you're stepping out of ministry, there are some things that we wanted to do for you. And I apologize, I accidentally let him in on the secret, so you guys got to forgive me on this, but I think it's good. So in January, we're going to throw a party after church, and we're going to have barbecue and ice cream, which makes sense. If you want to bring like a little letter of thank you, if you want to, throw in maybe a couple dollars or a gift card to Saltgrass. Is that Saltgrass? Is that right?
You don't need to do that.
I know you don't need to, but just a way to say thank you. We're going to do that in January, so we'll let you know when that's going to happen. But the other thing we're going to do is we're going to send them on like a little vacation next year to D.C. To watch opening weekend for the Nationals. And so,
Thank you.
So that's something, I kind of have insider information on what he likes, and so that was something that I feel like you would want to do, and so we're going to get to do that as a church as well. Opening weekend with the Nationals, playing the defending world champion Dodgers too, so it'll be pretty fun. So
It was kind of funny though, one Monday morning I opened up my email and Kyle had sent an email to all the elders, and in that email was that, and I text him, you go, you realize I'm in this email, right? So I'm glad you said that because I didn't want to act like I had to be surprised. But that's huge. Thank you. It's huge.
Yeah, so we're excited as a church to get to do that as
Hopefully
well.
they'll be the next World Series champions this year. So.
Doubt it. So the last thing I want to do is I just want to pray. I want to pray for you. I want to pray for what God is going to do. I pray for wisdom for you, faithfulness in this season, and really just that God would kind of continue to give you clarity to what he's asking of you. And then what I'd actually ask for you to do as well is pray for our church, pray for our pastors and our staff, pray for our church as we would continue to live out God's mission going forward, and that we would continue to see the fruit of our ministry take place. And so actually, why don't you pray first and I'll close this out.
Okay. All right, Heavenly Father, we just, I thank you so much just for the privilege and the honor of being able to serve here on staff for the last 18 years. And I thank you for all the people that I've met along the way and the people that have made Bay Area who it is today. And we just thank you for blessing us with that, with the past. But I also pray for our future. And I pray, first of all, that the people here will step up, that they would understand that we all need to continue in our relationship with you, that we would surrender to you more and more every day, and be obedient to your calling in our lives, and that's taking care of the church, being there to support the church, to help the church, to grow the church, and to let Webster and Houston know that the church is your bride, and that we treat it with respect and love. And so help us to do that. But I pray, Lord, that you would bring people to Bay Area too, that would help to fill in those spots, that we realize that all of us have spiritual gifts that we're using here. But we need all of us to use our spiritual gifts. We need more people to come to use their spiritual gifts. And this church could be so effective for you. And that's what we pray, is that you will be honored, that you will be praised because of what's being done in this church, and the people that you bring here now and in the future would take that responsibility to be your bride, to love you, and to allow people to realize what love is because of the way that we are as a church. So again, thank you for allowing our family to be here, to grow up and to serve here. And we're not alone. There's other generations of families doing the same thing here in this church too, and that's a great thing to see. And I just pray that can continue in the future, and we can look back in another 20 years and just be impressed at what you have done with so few, and that we would grow and knowing you better and better every day. So thank you for loving us. Thank you for bringing us here together. Thank you for allowing us to be a part of your church here at Bay Area. And again, help us to carry out your word as we're sent out to the world with your gospel. So thank you, Lord.
And God, we just thank you for Mom and Dad. Just the years of faithful ministry that they've done, serving your church, serving your people, calling people into ministry. And I just think of the people that are serving in vocational ministry now because of the impact that Mom and Dad had on them. God, I think about the people in this church who are faithfully following you because of their commitment. And God, I just thank you that that you are a God who calls broken people like us to serve your church in the way that you have, God. And I pray for this next season for Mom and Dad. God, I pray for just continued faithfulness to your will and your word. God, I pray for wisdom and understanding, God, and I pray that you would just continue to bless them through that. God, that they would get to be and live the life that you've called them to live, God, and that is a life of joy and a life of wisdom, a life of faithfulness, God, and that they would get to enjoy the faithfulness that they've lived according to for the past years, God. I just pray we would continue to see generations after them that are grown and raised up to know you and serve you. And God, I pray that there are people in this room that because of the testimony of faithfulness of vocational ministry have decided or will decide to step into full-time ministry, God. And I pray that just the legacy of Grandpa and Dad, God, would just continue to help the church grow and move in the mission of God, and we would get to see the fruit of that in our lifetimes, God. And I just thank you again. I just pray for you just to continually teach us what it means just to say yes to the next thing, God, and just give us all of the grace and all of the things that we need to walk in it. And we just pray these things in your name. Amen.
We continue worshiping a great God who